what is going on in Spain right now? Some crazy, crazy stuff. And it's getting a little bit scary over there. 60,000 migrants crossing the border over the sea, and they've crossed into Spain's North African territory of Ceuta from Morocco in the last 24 hours, Ceuta's president said. I think I'm saying that right, Ceuta. 34 people have died during this crossing. The influx comes after Spain's Supreme Court ruled that migrants stopped at sea while trying to reach Ceuta or Melilla, another Spanish enclave or exclave, cannot be summarily returned to Morocco. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez described the situation as an attack and said all illegal migrants would be returned to Morocco as soon as possible. Several European leaders have expressed concern, some promising to tighten border controls. More than 25,000 returned to Morocco voluntarily so far. You see these images on TV, and it does harken back to the Biden years, the Biden administration, and the influx at the southern border of the United States and Mexico, and the absolute swath of armies, really, of migrants coming over the border. Joining us on the phone to give us a little bit of insight onto this and some other things is Dr. Wilfred Reilly, Kentucky State University now, but originally from the Chicagoland area. Dr. Reilly, welcome back onto the show.
Yeah, glad to be here, Mike.
Yes, we've chatted with you many times. Dan has chatted with you many times, I know, as well. And I want to get into Unified Solutions America as well. One of the this company you founded, and which I also am on the advisory board of. That does tie in a little bit to this. But first, let's get your thoughts on what is going on in Spain.
I mean, I think it's an absolutely crazy situation. The pictures look like World War Z.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is a bit far to the right, but there's a book, The Camp of the Saints, that describes this exact situation where you have some sort of legal decision that allows people to simply enter mainstream Europe, or what you could call the Western world, from around the world. Spain actually, as you said, I mean, that was exactly accurate. They made this call that people who make it to the country or to one of the territorial outposts of the country, I think the Rock of Gibraltar, that kind of thing, they can't just be sent back. Just as Joe Biden said, actually, they have to go through this complex legal proceeding. There are asylum claims you can make. So, I mean, people have iPhones in urban Morocco. As that decision came down, a group of something like 60,000 people by this point broke through the border wall around what's technically Spanish territory and rushed through the holes in it and basically invaded the country. And this is, when you look at the group, this is entirely young fighting men. There aren't any women. There aren't any children. Morocco itself is a fairly developed Arab and West African country. You know, they're not starving there. There's no war there. So this is entirely sort of mass economic migration of young guys. And there's nothing wrong with Spain. There's nothing wrong with Morocco. But the question is, will any country allow this? Will you let people simply cross your border without, I mean, what would have happened in the past is that the Spanish army, which is no joke, would have been dispatched down there. You probably wouldn't have opened fire immediately, but you would have given 3 warnings. You would have had armored fighting vehicles blocking any further path into the country. Spain didn't do that. The prime minister, who's a man of the left, as I understand, actually refused to do that. So they're just sort of saying vaguely, well, at some point we're going to return these people. The question is, given what their own decision just was, I'm not an expert on European law, but is that even possible? So right now, as I understand, there's still people crossing the border. There are broken slabs in the border, and there were people pouring through them.
Yeah, and it looks a lot like the end of the border of the United States, which I've been to in, south of San Diego and right north of Tijuana. There's the westernmost part of the Mexico border. And I've talked to Border Patrol agents there where they have had to stop people on boats going out into the water and then coming back in. Some people have tried to swim because the the physical wall does go out way into the ocean, but, obviously it can't go all the way out. But here you have in Spain a similar sort of thing. Where I'm looking at a picture here on BBC.com of these migrants swimming around the border fence, and at least 30 of them have died here. So this is a life or death situation, and it looks like the military is slowly, the Spanish military is slow to the punch, but they're finally getting involved here.
Well, it's good to hear they're finally rolling out the tanks. I mean, and this gets into Trump's comments on the border wall. And I think one of the reasons that despite the big guy being kind of abrasive, he ended up getting elected, failure to some extent is a choice. There's an obvious common sense reality where if you build a strong brick or metal fence across your border and you put guys every 200 yards with guns, there aren't going to be people crossing your border. And it's a tragedy if every year someone gets shot or something like that. But the alternative is, the Biden surge was 10 million people. Literally millions of people crossing the border, really in both directions. Mexico complains about USA expatriates. We also have a large border with Canada. Canadians can enter the country almost at will. I don't think that's as much of an issue, but drug smuggling and so on happens when that kind of thing can occur. So you can shut that down at any time. Modern Western countries, though, seem to have decided that it's a sort of moral sin to enforce borders, to harm people trying to enter them unwillingly, so on down the line. And I personally think we should go back to an older, better way. You can't simply have people deciding they want to live in your country, making up lies about there being a territorial war in Mexico or Nigeria or any of these places, and then just sort of entering your state to quote unquote seek asylum. And this was I think last comment, but a visceral illustration of it, where you saw the wall come down and these hundreds of fit young dudes just run into the other country. Now, you did mention this is what's called the Spanish territorial enclave. So it's across a thin branch of the sea from Spain proper. There are Spanish troops that can get there in hours. There are thousands of people living there that are Spanish, but these people aren't crossing the border wall and then immediately looking at Barcelona. But still, right. It's a reminder of what can easily occur.
Yeah, and it's hard to explain on the map. You have to look at it on a map there, because there's the Straits of Gibraltar, and then there's part of Spain that's below that, and which borders Morocco. It's not necessarily separated, this part of it, by water. But yeah, it's this broader question that so many of us are having in the Western civilization discussion. I remember when I was in high school in the 90s and taking French classes, our French teacher explained one of the reasons that the French people are so kind of snobby about their language, and about how if you go to France and attempt to speak English, they'll be rude to you, is because they really have pride of their language and their culture, and they don't want it to go away. Now, this is in the 90s. And fast forward, 30 plus years later, that's just one example, but a lot of these countries in Western Europe, the leftist leaders and the left of center leaders of them, they don't seem to have a whole lot of care about the culture of those countries, and it's this broader sort of. It's not a melting pot, because what's happening is a lot of these migrants are coming to these countries and they're keeping the culture that they came from and bringing it to the country, but then fighting against the sitting culture of said country. We've all had those enclaves in the United States, Little Italy, Chinatown, et cetera, of all different things. That's part of our country, the fabric of our country, so on and so forth. But the agreement we used to have was that we were all melting together in one pot. We're all Americans. There's been a different vein of multiculturalism that's happened in the last 30 years. And it's not just here in the United States. It's here in Western Europe as well. So this is just the latest sort of news story about that. How does this relate to trying to do a transition here to Unified Solutions America and this kind of fight against the identitarianism and the balkanization that so many on the left have attempted to do in our culture here in the United States for years, and the kind of blowback that has occurred in the last couple of years to that, and the sort of fight for more unity that corporate boardrooms are trying to get more towards, and our culture at large is as well?
Yeah, I mean, so this is a tough topic because individually, the average person who comes to the USA from Mexico or Poland, I mean, a lot of the communities we have in Chicago or you'd see in Manhattan is a great guy. So immigration is something that all countries engage in. But there also, if we're being real, there is a French national character. I'll get to the business in a second, but when you go to Paris, if you're on a vacation with your girl or your wife, you'd like to see Frenchmen, people smoking those silly little cigarettes, maybe a beret. You'd like to see baguettes and coq au vin in the restaurants. I mean, there's a French population that has a French accent. We joke about them hygiene and so on, but it's obvious what a French woman looks like. You've played soccer, perhaps traveling as a high school age against French guys. So, I mean, even when we looked at the French competitive soccer team in the World Cup, it was very obvious. And again, good guys, good athletes, but it was very obvious there'd been extensive Islamic, West African, et cetera, migration from other civilized regions into France very recently, and that now is a total perhaps 20% of the French population. That in and of itself is not inherently bad, which I think is something the right struggles with. But the question is, do those people want to be Frenchmen? And beyond that, there's an even tougher question of at what point does it become impossible to make them Frenchmen? Are French people, Southern Europeans who speak French, going to be the majority in France in 35, 40, 50 years. And for a long time, it's been almost taboo to ask this, but when we look at mass migration today, many people, including people in leading minority states, Japan, Mexico, for example, when they look at migration from South America, have to ask this question. I think the bare minimum is assimilation. Everybody has to be on the same page. They have to decide they want to do the same things. They want to follow the same law. And that's where the business you mentioned, Unified Solutions America, which you can check out at unifiedsolutionsAmerica.com. Both of our beautiful faces, Mike, are on the website. But our goal is to be pro-merit, pro-shared identity consultants. And the blunt way to say this would be we're sort of the first large anti-woke consultancy. I do a lot of pretty serious business as well as teaching. One thing I've heard a lot from corporate clients is I wish we could go back and get rid of all that junk that's been piled on the core business of selling shoes or whatever. If you're talking to a guy from Reebok, since maybe 2012, since the Black Lives Matter hashtag, the Me Too hashtag, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, kind of the entire thing, the races fighting in the streets in Kenosha, the political parties. And I mean, that's basically what we do. I mean, we can use trained AI to audit your corporate material and really take out things like your pronoun policy. We can bring in people like myself, James Lindsay, Mike Young, that's Local Distance, Mel Chen from Strategy Risks, Jason Reilly from the Wall Street Journal. You yourself are an advisor and potential consultant, as I've said, and talk your business through what happened, what the roots of this stuff are, which is James and Local's focus. And we can also guide you toward kind of quantifiable merit. So if you go to unifiedsolutionsAmerica.com, and obviously you notice that's the acronym USA, there's a chance to invest. We certainly encourage you guys to invest in Unified Solutions. When there are jobs available, those will be advertised. We have a series of white papers that have already been downloaded, combined tens of thousands of times. So, yeah, check us out. But the goal of Unified Solutions America is to get everyone that's on a team in your business on kind of the same page. And what we find statistically, mathematically, is that you can't operate a team when you have one rule for black guys, one rule for white guys, a different rule for female executives, a different rule for foreign people who work with the company strategically. And what's true for businesses is at a larger level true for nations. Like I said, Morocco, nice place, great country. People go to Casablanca. But you can't have a Moroccan quarter in Paris as though this were the Middle Ages where a quarter of the population lives.
Right.
If you want to go to France, you have to some extent, want to be a Frenchman. And countries have to start saying that. There's no moral duty to let in 1 million people to your nation that dislike your country.
Yeah. But like to on the corporate side too, you can't have a group of people, let's say you're a relatively large corporation, and say, hey, these group of workers over here, this is the group of Asians. Like I had a friend tell me this story who's Asian, who said during the height of a lot of the hysteria from a couple of years ago, he got on a Zoom and he noticed they didn't tell them what the Zoom was about, and he looked at the Zoom, and every single person that he worked for a very large corporation was Asian. And then someone comes on, this white, female liberal comes on who's not Asian, who is leading the call and wanted to talk to all the Asians at the company to see how they're doing, and that's not how it should be. We shouldn't be balkanizing our groups of identitary. We shouldn't be grouping ourselves by our skin color at work, just as we should not be grouping ourselves by our identities separately in our country. Will, unfortunately, we got to go here, but I do appreciate you coming on. Unified Solutions America, or give us your personal website too, Will, because I know so many people love reading your books and your writings.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, my most recent book was Lies My Liberal Teacher Told Me. My website is wilfredreilly.com, if I recall the attachment on the university site. But the best way to find me is just to search my name. It's Wilfred. I'm from Chicago, a very Irish moniker. It's Wilfred Reilly, but Reilly.
Only one L. Wilfred Reilly, Reilly. Well,
LLY.
LLY, yes, but only one L in Wilfred. Dr. Wilfred Reilly, as always, thanks for coming on to Chicago's Morning Answer.
Well, thanks for letting me do that, Mike. Have a good day.
We'll be right back.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hey, business owners, is your business and money in good hands? Does your bank invest in your success? Hi, Mike Gallagher here, letting you know that when you need a relationship bank, Signature Bank makes commercial banking personal. I love these guys.